and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Artificial intelligence is rapidly becoming a part of our daily lives, from the tools that we use at work to aiding decisions that are made in courtrooms and hospitals. But as technology evolves more rapidly than the governance frameworks, the question is no longer if Malaysia should govern AI, but how. How fast and how much. So a new white paper by the Institute of Strategic and International Studies Malaysia seeks to unpack what AI governance really means and why it matters for Malaysia's future. So today on the show, I have one of the authors of the paper, Farlina Said, who is a fellow in cyber and technology policy at the think tank ISIS Malaysia, where her research focuses on cyber stability, national interest in emerging technologies, as well as peaceful and meaningful use of cyber and digital tools. I also have in the studio with me Adilah Junid, who is the Director of Legal and Government Affairs at Microsoft Malaysia. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Let's talk a little bit about this paper. But I want to kind of set the scene as we begin our conversation, because I think when people hear AI governance, they think of laws and regulations and rules. So if I understand correctly, based on your paper, you set the scene as governance being more than that, being a broader concept. Farlina, if I maybe start with you, can you explain to us what exactly AI governance encompasses?
Thank you so much for the question and also for having us here. So actually that was the very first thing that we actually had to tackle when we were working on the paper. What is it when we were thinking when we look at AI governance? And definitely if we're thinking about governing, you actually have to govern something. But the governance in terms of government, it has to actually move in a direction that actually charts your ambitions of what you want in AI. So I think that is actually why when we had the paper was formed from a workshop, and also with conversations with industry experts, for instance, like Adilah, and then also with My Digital as well. And in that sense, there were things that actually had to be articulated when you're looking at cultivating AI for the nation. And the second part is actually about mitigating risks of AI deployment. So when we're looking at AI governance, when a government is trying to steep AI into society, they actually do have to look at these two things, and they actually have different components. For AI deployment, for cultivating AI, for instance, you would actually take a look at things from like infrastructure. You would have to take a look at talent. While when you're actually looking at mitigating risk, that's perhaps where your conversations of like laws would actually come in. But first, you would actually have to understand the technology itself. So in a way, that's hence in all of government and whole of government.
That's quite tough, because you have to understand something that's new and rapidly evolving before you can learn how to kind of govern its adoption. Adilah, yes.
I'd love to chip in, actually.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I do have to say, so Farlina's being very modest here. It's no mean feat to actually try and draw all these different understanding, different sort of stakeholders' understanding of what it means to govern AI. So it ranges from, you might have a guideline, you might have a law, you might have an institutional framework, and those are all relevant, right, for AI governance. So I think we were trying to get people to talk about that broad range of institutional structures, tools, processes that all go towards having an approach to AI governance. I did want to maybe, just so flag one of the parallels that we like to draw is, for example, the parallel with how nuclear power is governed or civil aviation is governed. It's not just one thing, not just one law. You have an institutional network across different countries, international arrangements, domestic arrangements, a whole ecosystem behind what comes up with the tools and technologies, and that can be domestic, international, and so it's much more complex than one thing.
That's a really great example, because very few people think about what goes behind civil aviation regulations, but it helps keep us safe when we use it without thinking anymore. Where are we just in terms of where Malaysia's at? Let's take today as an example. We'll just take, the the test of today. Where are we in terms of how much or how little we govern AI compared to, say, where the rest of the world is, Farlina?
I think if we were to break it down to adoption, cultivating the entire sectors. So definitely there was the AI governance and ethics, I think, guideline that was actually launched for developing AI. There was also the AI roadmap that was actually launched in 2021. But aside from that, we actually also have, I think, different efforts when it comes to mitigating the risk. For instance, data protection. I think even when we're looking at Communications and Multimedia Act and what it actually talks about misuse in the communications and multimedia industry, for instance. So we actually have pieces of governing, I think, tools in different parts of the nation. I think that is actually also why when we actually look at the National AI Office that was launched, that was actually necessary to galvanize every one of these tools to make sure that it's actually heading in one direction. Because looking at even some of the efforts that's actually done in certain sectors, for instance, Bank Negara, that has actually worked their own sandbox on how to actually approach AI and how to look at AI adoption in their own sector. It shows that there's actually maturity for these types of activities in different parts of Malaysia's ecosystem.
Okay, what do you think, Adilah? How would you gauge or assess where we're at in terms of AI governance, both in adoption and mitigating risk?
So as Farlina mentioned, right, AI doesn't come out of nowhere that into our world that
like
we're
you
unprepared
wake up one day and it's
exactly
there.
right. AI is built on existing data sets. It's in our existing devices that communicate through the internet on our existing networks. So we have in place a lot of the building blocks that we need to address some of the risks that arise from AI use. We have data protection in place, we have cybersecurity protections in place, and at the sectoral level, we have guidance on how certain services or products that are significant enough to warrant regulation, for example, banking, healthcare, communications, these all have sector-specific regulations that already require players in that sector to comply with certain requirements, and that should be true whether or not those players use AI. So those building blocks are in place already. So yeah, I would say from that extent, you don't have to look for the word AI in our laws and regulations or guidelines. The framework is there that is for us to build on with the introduction of this technology into how we do things.
Okay, what is the vision though? You know, when we talk about the need to govern AI, what is it that Malaysia is striving for in terms of our AI ambitions? Maybe paint a picture for me so that I can envision what it is that we are aspiring to be when it comes to AI.
I think this would be an interesting topic because I have a feeling that if we were to actually take a look at where we would actually like to go, I feel like different sectors of society would actually want to do different things when it comes to AI. But I think as a nation, that's where even when we're looking at what are our AI ambitions, and if we were to actually take note of the different speeches that were held either at the Economy Forum or actually last year during the AI office launch, there were hints that we are actually looking to have a semiconductor to software kind of industry. And that is actually, we would like to link, in terms of complexity, our industries from the chips to the data centers to actually having an AI industry that counts from, that includes like the solutions, the enterprise solutions, the types of coders that you could actually get in these types for these types of activities. So if I were to actually chart what our ambition looks like, that is actually what I think we're trying to achieve. Well, we would like to be competitive in this environment, because also at the same time, if we are competitive in this environment, it could make us world leaders in various fields.
So you're saying we're not just adopters of AI, but rather kind of leaders and innovators and creators as well? Would that be the way to characterize it?
Yes, I think that would actually be where I would say
that's
that
where we would want to. I mean,
want to be.
Well, firstly, I think that is part of the objectives for the newly formed National AI Office is to identify where we go next, right? Because the National AI Roadmap that Farlina mentioned was for the period 2021 to 2025. So I do believe that we will be seeing a new AI strategy or roadmap or action plan for the coming period. And the hints are there already, right? So I think in the 4IR policy, the National 4IR policy, it already identified, right? The foundational technologies, AI is one of them that's going to take us to the next level. The new industrial master plan, that's the one that identified Gen AI, for example, as a new industrial sector for us to try and kind of take advantage of. And so, yeah, leveraging on AI for us to gain that competitiveness, resilience, and be a real kind of like presence in the global economy, in the sort of global markets. That's
what would it take to achieve those ambitions? I mean, yes, we've got to pinpoint exactly what it is we want to achieve, but along the way, we're going to have to need a whole host of things to help us get there. I mean, when you think about that, what are the different parts of your mind map when you think about what kind of resources we need, what kind of talent we need, what kind of governance and rules and regulations, what does that look like? Laid out for us, the different areas that I'm sure you have worked on and thought about as well, Farlina.
Yeah, I think so. The things that we have seen, at least in the past few years, which Malaysia has done well, is perhaps in the infrastructure, basic infrastructure, which you would have thought about data centers, for instance, high-speed, high-speed connectivity, exactly. I think as you actually go up to the needs of your AI industry, you would encounter certain areas like your knowledge centers and your R&D centers to actually be able to develop some of these algorithms, I suppose, if that's how we could actually describe it, so that they could be deployed in certain use cases. But also at the same time, you would actually have to think about the talent that goes behind it, which I think Adilah will have so many things yet, because I think it's one of the areas Microsoft is working very hard on to actually make sure that Malaysia reaches our talent, at least we develop the talent for the future. And I think in that sense, that is actually a very basic way of actually looking at what we would actually need to realize the AI future. The second part, as you mentioned, is perhaps about risk mitigation. It is about like the issues that you have, the regulations and the problems that you could have from AI deployment. It can be anything from loss of jobs, for instance. It can actually also be when you have intellectual property laws that may actually not strengthen or may not actually create this competitive environment that you're actually looking at for a better AI ecosystem. So these are components of the same problem, actually, and these are things that our National AI Office will have the trouble to look at to make sure that it goes well.
Were these the things that you were referring to in your report as social harms?
For some of it, yes. I think for some of the social harms, it could actually go into even when you're looking at deep fake actually being produced or information actually perhaps being produced in a manner that would misuse the AI. But it would actually, because social harms, they're actually thresholds. So yeah.
So you'd also need to look at how to mitigate the risk of adoption of AI to reduce the social harms that come with it.
Yes, okay. I mean, I would even start before that, right? So I think part of the broader piece that we need to build is that general understanding and awareness at broad levels of society of what AI is, what it does, how it can be used, how it shouldn't be used. And then that actually, it's a lot like cybersecurity in that sense. It's not one agency's responsibility to ensure everyone is cyber safe. Us as normal users, for example, if we understand what the digital world is, how it works, then that understanding of what the potential harms are and how you should and shouldn't use that technology is part of what's
But that's kind of the growing pains of adoption.
Exactly,
right? We want to minimize the effects of the growing pains.
Exactly.
Let's come back to that. I do want to focus on one of the areas you touched on, which was talent development. And I think that's quite interesting, how we need to focus on this. So it's also part of minimizing the social harms that come with it. Adilah, when you look at how, as a player in the private sector, but one that's a leader in this industry or in this sector, what are your biggest concerns when you think about the need to really build capacity in talent?
Yeah. So I guess my biggest concern is to ensure that everybody has that opportunity to be included in the kind of advantages that AI can offer, right? So they have that opportunity to understand what the technology is, to learn the skills that can make them competitive in the new environment where people are using AI, right? So, so that's part of what one of the commitments Microsoft made is to skill an additional number of people. So I think we made a commitment to skill 800,000 Malaysians in AI, and that really cuts across all the different areas where skilling is important. So not just building that AI developer talent, which is perhaps what we might be looking for if we want to create an industry around AI, so Malaysian use cases for AI in certain industrial contexts, for example, or even algorithms developed by Malaysians using Malaysian data sets for specific use cases, all the way down to sort of everyday office workers who can be more competitive in a workplace where, for example, the company's systems are AI enabled or the company expects a certain type of turnaround because they have AI to support their staff, for example. It's, yeah.
That's a big scale.
Very big
scale. That's a big range of what kind of upskilling or skills development is needed.
Because the technology impacts everyone. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how... So at what point are you doing this talent and skills development? Are we talking about people who are already kind of embedded in the workforce, or does it go earlier than that? Are we talking about universities? Are we talking about schools? Are we talking about children?
Across
How
the
far
board,
back do we go?
Across the board, just as you see right now, NACSA already does things like My Cyber Hero for primary school children to understand cyber hygiene. I mean, as we become more mature, it should be something that it's kind of like a basic skill almost. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You know, sometimes I forget how recently AI has become part of our daily lives. It's actually just a few years ago when it appeared into our daily lives, and now we're I mean, in terms of adoption, it's becoming less scary, more normalized. What do you think, Farlina, if I may ask you, when we think about going forward with the future of AI governance in Malaysia, we want to do a multi-stakeholder approach to make sure that kind of everyone is on board. So as you guys pointed out, it really is such a wide range. What would be most effective so we're not just being siloed about it, being sectoral even? Is it necessary for this to be a bird's eye view, or can it be more specific and be sectoral and industry specific?
I think it actually depends on what you want to achieve, because there are certain things, for instance, that are security related, which can have greater relevance when you're only looking at the systems in your own sectors.
I understand.
So in that sense, those type of things may require for each sector to deeply reflect on the issues that they are facing within their own sectors when they're looking at adopting AI or deploying AI. So that's quite specific. But I think if we are actually going back to the idea of the AI ambition and actually what we would like to see for people to actually be more, for there to be more hands into the pie, because from the sounds of it, it's like with more hands into the pie, then maybe you can make something that really tastes really good. So,
but is that really the case?
In this case, we're actually hoping for the best. It's the same pie, as long as it's not different pies, right? That's what we're hoping. I think there are certain chokeholds when we actually do look at the value chain. For instance, when we look at research and development, for instance, that actually needs to be linked. It needs to actually have exchanges, and that can be underpinned by certain technical demands, for instance, data sets that actually has to be commonly, that you actually have to know how to leverage on, knowledge hubs, information exchanges, and then also to some extent, your business environment to actually grow these type of players is quite necessary for for them to become the AI heroes that you actually, the AI industry heroes that you're looking for. So for some of those AI ambitions, I think those are actually like some of the challenges.
When you wrote this paper, so this paper has been used as a kind of guidance for a guideline. Your white paper, has it been? It's been used as the guideline. How would you say that?
People have been very welcoming and taking it as input.
As input, okay.
And considerations as we develop sort of more official, formal positions on AI governance.
What did you find as in your kind of most interesting takeaway from this? Because it really does span a wide range of things. But when you looked at it and thought, okay, I kind of see where the future is heading, what did you take away from that process of writing this paper?
I think Malaysia is not doing so bad.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's like a lot of people would actually say that our ambitions to actually be an AI hub might be quite
lofty.
It might be, exactly. Okay. I think lofty is a good word to actually use for it.
We should have lofty ambitions.
But we should exactly. We should try to achieve things that are actually like further than what we think today. But also, I think when we took a look at what different countries are actually doing, where they were 10 years ago, which was not where we were 10 years ago. I mean, to be fair, our AI roadmap was launched during the pandemic. Right. And prior to that, we had different components of different things. I mean, it's like you could actually go to a university and perhaps they would actually have a course on computing to a certain extent. So you're not starting from zero, but definitely when the other countries were actually doing it in 2016, 2015, they had a lot of time to actually look at how AI can actually be inserted into their own industries. And that looks at like Made in China 2025. That actually looks at like Japan's domestic strategy on technology and AI. So those type of things actually shows, in the beginning, everybody actually thought of AI as another technology and another tool. And it's actually something that's supposed to help you in the future, say if you're actually doing agriculture, it's supposed to help you when you do your agriculture. So that's actually one of the discoveries, I think, that was quite important, I thought, for governance. That's why it has to balance between both. It has to actually grow, but it actually also has to safeguard the entire ecosystem.
What I found very interesting is that a lot of times, because people are coming from different backgrounds, different industries, even like, you know, even if they're if they have a horizontal view on something, for example, data protection across various industries, they're coming with a different lens. Yeah. So not everyone is necessarily speaking the same language. So having a coordinating mechanism, such as National AI Office or the workshop that we did, for example, with all those different stakeholders, is very helpful. And it's actually one of the design features of having a good AI governance approach, because it is a multi-stakeholder effort, right? It's not really ideal to have one kind of like...
So we have this body now, this National AI Office.
We do.
Can I ask you what you would like to see it prioritize, particularly in this year going forward? I mean, all eyes are, it's kind of long awaited and we've been waiting for this, and now all eyes are on what it will actually say and do and prioritize. What would you like to see it from the private sector specifically?
Well, I do think the office has its work cut out for it. It has articulated its 7 sort of like priorities that it's got already. One of which is the AI action plan for the next period, which I think will incorporate a lot of the elements of things that we spoke about. I guess for me right now, focusing on developing the capabilities, so the talent, not just to develop industrial capabilities in AI, but also to understand what it is, what the risks are, what the harms are, very broadly, because then we can start having meaningful and informed conversations about what we want to do, how we're going to achieve it. I think that.
One of the points in the report which I thought was interesting was for leadership is needed in cultivating the AI industry to build a harms repository for mitigating AI risk. And I think that's a well-observed, astute point to make, because we really do need that, and that's what we would like to see in terms of leadership in AI governance. Well, that's what I would like to see. What would you like to see, Farlina?
Building on, I guess, suppose on the point that you made, it's because actually when we realized about the harms repository, because it was actually reflected by the people who actually participated in the workshop, but also a lot of the technology can be a little bit unpredictable when you actually deploy it in society. So I think that's why a harms repository sometimes can actually be a list, almost like if your healthcare system actually understands diseases and your cybersecurity folks actually understand the different types of malware. Understanding what the algorithm does in terms of harms can actually assist, I think, in providing better policy making. I think when we are actually looking at how to approach this issue without actually stifling the environment. But what I would actually like, I suppose, for NEO, I think I will not make their lives difficult and choose something outside of their seven goals. I would choose maybe, I think looking at the AI technology action plan, I feel like that's actually important, and I think that's also where the other countries actually started in 2015, 2016, 2017. But also, I think focusing a lot on their code of ethics, and then actually finding a way to make some of the principles that's actually already in the AI roadmap, as well as in the AI ethics, governance and ethics guideline.
Yes, a National AI Governance and Ethics Guideline.
Yes, okay.
It's a mouthful.
Yes, I keep on, I think, mixing some of the G's. To actually make some of these practical, I think one of the challenge when you have principles is that the developers or even like the lawmakers may be a bit uncertain on what it actually looks like when they're actually really dealing with it in a practical sense. So it could be useful to actually have that end be a part of it.
Actually, I would like to say that again. I hope that that does appear to be on the horizon for National AI Office. That's one of the things that, as a sort of technology company, embodying and practicing, putting into practice those responsible AI principles that we have. That is something that, you know, for many people, they've not done it before. So working that out with the National AI Office, with some kind of like lighthouse users, for example, that would be a great way to get people comfortable with a new skill set, right? Which is like practicing, putting into practice the responsible AI.
Well, both of you, thank you so much for coming and speaking about this, the good work that you've put into this paper. Appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing your insights with us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.